And for more on this story, I'm joined here in the studio by France 24 International Affairs editor Kethevane Gorjestani. Kethevane, what's the latest that we know about this major operation?
Well, it seems that this operation is slowly expanding. You said it, we're in day 2 of this operation, and all signs from the reporting on the ground is that the Israeli military seems to be settling in for more of these types of operations. Right now, it's more focused on the northern part of the West Bank, around cities like Jenin, Tubas, or Tulkarm. And as you said, there was that announcement by the Israeli forces that they had killed at least 5 militants. There was confirmation by one of these militant groups, the Islamic Jihad, that one of those killed was indeed one of their top commanders, Muhammad Jabir, also known as Abu Shuja. So that's for what happened in those latest operations. But the thinking behind this operation, at least from the Israeli side, and their explanation as to why they're doing this, is that their operations are meant to root out militants from these locations, because they believe that these cities like Jenin, like Tulkarm, have become militant strongholds, and they believe that this is where these militants organize to carry out attacks against Israelis. So that is the argument on the Israeli side, and this was sort of put into one specific statement by the foreign minister of Israel, Israel Katz, who talked about the Islamic Iranian terror infrastructure, so those holdouts, and accusing Iran of trying to establish an Eastern Front by funding and arming terrorists. And he sort of compared the situation with Gaza by hinting at the possibility that there should be a temporary evacuation from one neighborhood to another, something that we've seen, of course, happen in Gaza, where the Israeli forces repeatedly have called for evacuations of different areas of Gaza, really basically displacing most of the population of Gaza. And so the fear, of course, for the international community, for the United Nations, is that this will lead to the same humanitarian toll that we've seen in Gaza, and of course the situation there being far less deaths, more than 600 Palestinians, of course, about a dozen or so Israelis, but yet there is this fear that there might be that third front. The Israelis saying that it's backed by Iran, and it's Iran that's opening a third front, but there's also the risk for Israel that there will be a third front after Gaza and that border with Lebanon.
Indeed, and that situation in Gaza already catastrophic for civilians there, could only get worse if expanded to the West Bank. We've heard from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights there. What's the reaction been from elsewhere across the international community?
Well, there have been a few major reactions besides the UN that has come out, of course, asking for this to stop immediately. And the UN Secretary General, in a statement, also urging Israeli forces to, quote, exercise maximum restraint and use lethal force only when it is strictly unavoidable. These are things that we've heard from the UN when it comes to Gaza, with not much success, it has to be said. At the same time, you have the Palestinian Authority, which is governing basically some of the locations in the West Bank, that called on the United States, because they have, things that they can discuss with the Americans, and they're asking for the Americans to intervene when it comes to Israeli forces. The U.S. so far hasn't really responded on the specific operation that is going on, but yesterday the State Department did sanction more of the settlers of the West Bank for their role in the violence in the West Bank. Nothing so far on the actual Israeli forces. And you have now the EU that is looking into possibly sanctioning some of the Israeli ministers, without naming anyone, without naming any messages, but for carrying out hate messages against the Palestinians.